I'm Jason, UFC, and today we have a story about UFC middleweight contender Dricus Du Plessis echoes disrespect from the UFC for promising the winner of Khamzat-Usman versus Kamaru-Usman the next middleweight title shot. Both fighters are currently ranked in the UFC welterweight division, not middleweight, welterweight division. How did UFC CEO Dana White convince Khamzat-Usman and Kamaru Usman to fight in a UFC 294 co-main event on less than 2 weeks' notice? By promising the winner the next shot at current UFC middleweight champion Sean Strickland. That is an absolute fact, Dana White told the Pat McAfee show. The fact that these guys are taking this fight on short notice, the winner will get the next shot at the champion, Sean Strickland, barring injuries and other things that can possibly happen. Hold on, what's other things that can possibly happen? Who knows? Chimaev was originally booked to fight against former middleweight title challenger Paulo Costa. However, a elbow surgery forced Paulo Costa to withdraw earlier this week, paving the way for the unbooked Kamaru Usman to make his octagon return. That means the number 2 ranked UFC middleweight contender Dricus Du Plessis will have to take another fight or wait until some point in 2024 to compete for the UFC middleweight championship, an opportunity he let slip through his fingers. We have to come back to that point because that just doesn't make any sense. But let me read that part, right? And this is what they're saying: an opportunity Dricus Du Plessis let slip through his fingers just last month. We definitely have to come back to that point because that doesn't make any sense. Dricus Du Plessis echoes his fans' disappointment on his Instagram account. 2 unranked fighters at 185-pound. Winner fights for the title. Dricus Du Plessis, the disrespect brother. Dana White, the new Vince McMahon in town for TKO. Okay, that's a little bit extreme. I don't agree with that statement. Dricus Du Plessis... Okay, let's say this. Dricus Du Plessis turned down the opportunity to fight then champion Israel Adesanya at UFC 293 in Sydney, a spot that eventually went to Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland made the most of his opportunity by capturing a unanimous decision victory over Israel, the last stylebender. Adesanya blowing open the 185-pound middleweight division and putting Dricus Du Plessis' title shot in jeopardy. Let's face it, it's never a good idea to upset the... Who wrote this article? My God, it's like written by the UFC, right? Like, I mean, are you serious? Kamaru Usman, who previously held the title at 170-pound welterweight, has long teased a jump to the middleweight division, but only if Israel Adesanya was no longer champion. As for Chimaev, he was bouncing back and forth between welterweight and middleweight division before a colossal scale fail forced him to stay against Nate Diaz. UFC, I think that was UFC 279. He was scheduled to fight... Chimaev was scheduled to fight Nate Diaz in the welterweight division of a main event. He ended up coming in like 178 pounds, 179 pounds or something. He missed weight by like 7-8 pounds. He ended up fighting Kevin Holland in a catchweight fight. But a colossal scare fail forced him to stay at 185 pounds, which no longer seems like a punishment considering what's at stake. For much... Wow, this was an interesting article to read, right? Okay, so we're going to start backwards, right? First, we're going to say, let's face it, it's never a good idea to, quote, upset the boss. Now, I mean, okay, we're going to take that point, and then we're going to take the same point and say, Dricus Du Plessis, quote, turned down the opportunity to fight Israel Adesanya at UFC 293. Okay, right? So those 2 points are kind of the same point. And then we had another point up here, which I totally disagreed with. This one. That means the number 2 ranked middleweight contender. Dricus Du Plessis will have to take another fight or wait until some point into 2024 to compete for the 185-pound strap, an opportunity he let slip through his fingers just last month. Now, why I said I thought this article was written by somebody in the UFC is because, I mean, Dricus Du Plessis, in no part of this interview is it mentioned that Dricus Du Plessis defeated the number one ranked contender, Robert Whittaker, like 2 months before UFC 293, right? It's not like Dricus Du Plessis just turned down the opportunity, like he didn't take the fight versus Israel Adesanya. He fought Robert Whittaker, TK'd old Robert Whittaker in the second round. He didn't get like a boring 3-round decision. After the fight, he was dealing with, some nicks and injury that would force him to not be able to fight Israel Adesanya on 2 months' notice, right? Another point that's not made in this article is that Jared Cannonier, who has a victory over Sean Strickland, was the backup fighter for UFC 293, Sean Strickland versus Israel Adesanya. If Israel Adesanya would have won, if Israel Adesanya would have won, Israel Adesanya has a victory over Jared Cannonier. So I can understand the UFC saying, okay, the victory, the winner of chimaev versus Paulo Costa can get the next title shot, yada, yada, yada. But, right, with Sean Strickland winning, you would think the backup fighter, Jared Cannonier, having a victory over Sean Strickland, why would they not make that fight next? Why did, a few weeks after Sean Strickland won the title, why did the UFC book Jared Cannonier versus Roman Dolidze? Why is Dricus Du Plessis and Sean Strickland still without an opponent? Chimaev has not fought in 1 year. The last time Usman fought was in March of this year, and he said that he thought he came back too early. Who's to say that this fight, which is on 10 days' notice, between Khamzat Chimaev and Kamaru-Usman, who's to say that they're going to be ready for when Sean Strickland is ready next year? Sean Strickland, he didn't take too much damage versus Israel Adesanya. It was a unanimous decision victory. Why don't they say, okay, the winner of this fight has to fight Sean Strickland in 2 months? Right? And it's like everyone is throwing Dricus Du Plessis, everyone. And that's why I said I thought this article was written by someone in the UFC. It's like, why do we not mention the fact that Dricus Du Plessis defeated the number one ranked middleweight contender, right? Not only defeated him, like he finished him in the second round. He finished Robert Whittaker in the second round. It wasn't a boring decision. The UFC, and now listen, I'm an MMA casual, but how many times that my hardcore MMA fans, how many times have you heard the UFC tell a number one contender that they, after winning their fight, right, they have to fight the champion in 2 months? Is the UFC saying, okay, the winner of Khamzat Chimaev and Kamaru-Usman has to fight Sean Strickland in January? Is that what they're saying? Or no, right? Sean Strickland is not booked for a fight. Dricus Du Plessis is not booked for a fight. Schedule them to fight, right? And the winner of Khamzat Chimaev versus Kamaru-Usman, they could fight they could be that number one contender, right? Like, I don't get it. I just don't understand. Chimaev has not fought in 1 year. Kamaru-Usman last fight was in, March of, it's like 7 months ago, right? So it's just like he's moving up to a new division. Who knows how much damage each fighter is going to take in this fight, right? Like, this could be a fight where, each fighter is going to be out for a while. So just like, why not just schedule? The UFC has not, I'm assuming that after, in the UFC 294 post-fight press conference, we're going to get a lot more answers, right? But to me, even having this fight right now, be for the number one contender is just crazy. But if you look at the UFC middleweight rankings, it's kind of a disaster. You have names like Calvin Gastelum in the top 10, and Calvin Gastelum is like 2-5 in his last 7 fights. You know what I'm saying? Like, so how can someone who be like 2-5 in the last 7 fights, still be ranked in the top 10 in the middleweight division, right? When you have a new champion, the entire division opens up. There's a lot of new matches you can have with Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland could face Jared Cannonier, who he has a loss against. Sean Strickland could face Dricus Du Plessis, who's the #1 contender. Sean Strickland could face Robert Whittaker, even though he's coming off of a loss. But I just don't understand why Khamzat Chimaev, who's unranked in the middleweight division, Kamaru-Usman, who does have a victory over Sean Strickland when Sean Strickland was a welterweight. I don't see how the UFC can justify, and they will, they will. And my hardcore MMA fans, they're gonna eat it up and not say anything. But to me, I don't see why Khamzat Chimaev versus Kamaru-Usman, how those two being unranked in the middleweight division, how can you justify those two being the #1? How can this fight be a #1 contender? I don't remember the UFC saying that Khamzat Chimaev versus Paulo Costa was for the #1 contender. They didn't say that was a title eliminator. This is definitely for the #1 contendership, right? And if you're going to make the argument that, well, the only reason that Kamaru-Usman accepted this fight is because it's, for the #1 contendership, where's the rest of the middleweights, right? Like, was Jared Cannonier offered the fight? Was Dricus Du Plessis offered the fight? What about a Bo Nickel? Even a Bo Nickel. Was, Brendan Allen, Marvin Vittori? Was all the other ranked middleweights offered this fight? And did they say no? Did they know that this, this opportunity to face a welterweight could have been for the championship? Because I'm pretty sure a few more middleweights would have raised their hand and took this fight. But, let me know your opinion of this story. Like I said, I'm an MMA casual, so what the hell do I know? But let me know your opinion of this story. I totally agree with Dricus Du Plessis. I think with Dricus Du Plessis not scheduled for a fight, with Sean Strickland not scheduled for a fight, with Khamzat Chimaev and Kamaru-Usman fighting this weekend, just make Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland, right? And then the winner of Khamzat Chimaev versus Kamaru-Usman could face the winner of Dricus Du Plessis and Sean Strickland, right? That just seemed like that would make more sense in my opinion. But let me know your opinion of this story. I'm Jason, UFC. Today we had a story about UFC middleweight contender Dricus Du Plessis echoes disrespect from the UFC for promising the winner of Khamzat Chimaev versus Kamaru-Usman the next middleweight title shot. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the $1 donation button, and please tune in to the next video on this channel. Thanks a million for watching.